Those were some photographs that folks had brought into the sanctuary and put up. So I wanted you all to see what they were displaying here in the sanctuary. Thank you all for coming. The links in the chat are documents for the remembrance service. There's an autobiography, the memorial handout that we're doing here, and the slides. So if you all wanted to follow along at home, please feel free to do that. The links are in the chat.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to being here either in person and all of our guests that are on Zoom. Thank you for joining us. We're gathered to remember and honor the life of Karl Kronberg. And later in the service, we will have the opportunity to hear from you, whether you are in person or on Zoom. So we look forward to that as well. My name is Reverend Dana Lightsey, and my first day here as the minister for Namakwa Unitarian Universalist Congregation was November 1st. And on that day, I walked into my office, as the very first time I've walked into that office, and on the table was a gift and a card. Well, how thoughtful of someone. So I opened the card, but it wasn't signed. That's interesting. And I opened the gift, and it was a book called Sacred Nature by Karen Armstrong. And so I'm a huge fan of Karen Armstrong, and this was her latest book, which I did not yet own. So I was delighted by whoever this mystery person was. And it was a couple weeks later that I saw in the front cover a brief note that said, "Congratulations on your new ministry, Karl Kronberg." Who is this sweet and thoughtful man who shares my appreciation of Karen Armstrong? A week or so later, I had the pleasure of meeting Karl and thanking him for the book. And he told me that this book described his own personal spirituality. And I told him, mine too. Thank you. And as I knew Karl over the past few months since then, since November 1st, I knew him to be a quiet person, watching and listening, taking everything in, but with these lively, very focused and attentive eyes. Do you know what I mean? But always with a smile. And I wondered what was happening, behind those intelligent and inquisitive eyes. And in a few conversations that we had before he died, I learned a bit more when he talked about protesting the Vietnam War and about being arrested. But I didn't fully understand the extent of his involvement until I read his autobiography, which I think many of you read as well. And I made 10 copies, but I noticed a bit ago that they're already gone from back there. So if you stick around for the reception, I'll quickly run off some more if anybody wants. Show of hands if you want a copy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, great. I'll make 6 or 7 more. So, yeah. Thank you. It's well worth the read, and I'm really glad that he wrote it, and that his wife Fran shared it with us. So I look forward to hearing more about Karl from many of you today. But clearly, what I gathered from that was that his deep passion for being alive and his deep passion for justice, and willing to dive right into the middle of an issue, a project, or a political campaign. So often, as Unitarian Universalists, we talk about the importance of living our values in the world. I personally am in awe of how powerfully this quiet, unassuming man did exactly that throughout his life. He was uncompromising about his values and willing to be arrested to take a stand. In his autobiography, he says, "My life has been dictated by the social and historical forces around me, as well as the choices made by an inner sense of justice." As it turns out, Karl was a warrior for peace and justice. It is clear that his inner sense of justice was driven by a burning compassion for those who were suffering and dying from injustice. And he even was arrested under the direct orders of the head of the FBI, Herbert Hoover. He endured suffering from the unjust, unfair treatment of the police who brutalized him in jail. Carl was a community organizer, and I have to admit, as I was reading it, I was so sad that he was not able to be a community organizer for us right now, which I think he would have loved to have been. He was involved in just about every organization that came along that would help him achieve his goals of working towards justice. If you read his autobiography, just the list of all the groups that he was in at one particular time in his life was like amazing. But Carl was passionate about many interests in his life, including a lifelong passion for anthropology and archaeology, along with the social issues that go along with those. He worked hard to alleviate the suffering of people experiencing homelessness, and he loved to drum and was involved in drumming groups wherever he lived. And a special treat today is that we get to hear from the drumming group that he was a part of here in Colorado. And I think you guys meet in Longmont, actually, right? You do meet in Loveland. Fantastic. So we'll be hearing from Djembe Jive 3 times today. I'm looking forward to that. So I'm sure if and where his spirit is, he'll be drumming right along. And Carl loved nature. As I said, and as he told me, it was his spirituality. He and his wife, Fran, spent a great deal of time hiking in our beautiful mountains, enjoying the magnificence of it and working to protect it, helping to provide meaning and purpose and understanding of life itself for Carl. So my friends, today is a day worthy of grief. And if you feel that grief come over you, I invite you to not do the typical American thing and hold it in. I invite you to follow the instructions of our ancestors and let that grief flow. In many indigenous communities, which Carl was also passionate about supporting and being a part of indigenous communities, they see that the grief that one expresses and that one feels helps to carry that person in whatever form their belief may be forward. And what we can say is that that grief that we experience is an expression of the deep love that we had and that we continue to have for this person. And Carl, now that we've gotten to know him better, so many of us, feel that connection as well. So if you feel that grief come along, don't feel like you have to hold it back. It is an honest and true expression of your love and care and for what has been lost in his spirit. I'd like to close with these words by Khalil Gibran. You would know the secret of death, but how shall you find it unless you seek it in the heart of life? The owl whose night-bound eyes are blind unto the day cannot unveil the mystery of light. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide until the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. So I light our chalice for Carl's amazing and unique spirit, for his passion and courage to live his values in such a powerful way, and for all of the ways that he touched our lives and countless other lives during his lifetime. much for that. That was amazing. I'd like to invite Nancy to come up and speak with you. Thank you.
Like that? Okay. Wow. Until I read Carl's autobiography, I had no idea what an incredible life he led in his early years and even later. Yet thinking about it, I don't doubt it. Carl demonstrated solid strength in his dedication to whatever he was involved in. This was evident in his passion for the outdoors and his love for music, especially for drumming. I was and still am amazed at the many noted drummers he had experience with. Babatunde, Arthur Hall, a teacher and drummer in Massachusetts, Brian, whom I had a class with. I mean, what are the odds of that we both knew this guy? And even Greg Hansen, with whom I started with in 2010. Whenever a question or comment was made regarding a master drummer, Carl would have a valuable statement to make, and it was often true. Carl had an outstanding resource library of drumming literature, CDs, and videos of many, many skilled musicians. Then there was his unbelievable collection of instruments. It was always a treat to see Carl arrive to class to see what beautiful drum he was playing, as well as what he was wearing. He was the best dressed dude I'd ever seen, ever. Every week, a new outfit. He just was so handsome. And talking about his generosity, in 2020, he came to class in a snowy December night with Starbucks cookies for everyone and a teddy bear, which is I brought today with the photos back there. Carl started with djembe jive in the fall of 2016 as a student through the Chilson Rec Center. Up until this past spring, approximately 7 years, Carl attended drumming classes, drumming workshops, and numerous drum circles, and played in our performances throughout northern Colorado. This included performing at the Lincoln Center, Foot Lagoon, the library, Good Samaritan, Longmont Art Walks, the River's Edge, the Sustainable Fair, just to mention a few. I wish to acknowledge Fran for driving Carl to classes and to the events these past few years so he could play. Thank you, Fran. Carl also attended the Fale drum classes in Fort Collins, becoming friends with Tony and Clay. Carl was dependable and supportive of djembe jive. He could be counted on to attend class and play at the performances and circles. He would usually bring a conga drum and a board for the drum to sit on at circles. And those things are heavy, let me tell you, they're heavy. He was also very tolerable of some of my, let's say, out of the norm instruments, such as squeaky pigs and quacky ducks. He was a good sport. Carl would always give a helping hand to new drummers, showing them the strikes and how to play. I'll end with what was his typical freestyle improv strikes that he would play. And that is when we play a beat and you play what you want. He would always do a drum roll. So I'd like everyone to do a drum roll on your legs. Drum roll. Bring it up, bring it up, bring it up. Boom. Here's to you, Carl.
I would like to share with you something that Carl wrote called A Spiritual Journey. And Fran came across it just a few days ago, I think. So Carl says, I was born in 1946 during World War II. No, I was born in 1946, period. During World War II, my father was stationed in Louisiana, where he met my mother. While he was at war, my mother moved to New York City and lived with his parents and converted to Judaism, which was his father's faith. We moved to Chicago, where he worked for the disabled American veterans. During the earliest years of my life, he says, I went to synagogue. When I was 14, my parents divorced and I lost interest in Judaism. I visited different churches, but never felt a strong spiritual attachment. In 1965, I moved to Buffalo, New York, and went to the University of Buffalo. Prior to coming to Buffalo, I was in ROTC and planned to go into the military. The University of Buffalo is often called Berkeley East. Like Berkeley, it was a hotbed of activity against the Vietnam War. It did not take me long to get involved, and in 1968, I was participating in a peaceful rally at the Unitarian Church. The FBI, along with the Buffalo Police Department, the US Marshals, the Border Patrol, and with local and national press in tow, attacked the church. 8 others and I were arrested for assaulting FBI agents. We became known as the Buffalo 9. After 2 one-month-long trials, I was found not guilty and became a footnote in history. My life had changed dramatically from a working-class kid in Chicago to an anti-Vietnam War and community activist. I always had an interest in religion. I became a liaison between radical anti-war movement and the church community. I worked as a local organizer for Martin Luther King Jr.'s March on Washington, and later as a local organizer for Jesse Jackson's presidential race. I spent many hours at Black churches listening to prayers and songs. When I wasn't involved in community activity, I went on hikes in the countryside, and I always enjoyed being outdoors. Even as a small child, I had spent many hours walking in the woods. Hiking was more than exercise. I always felt being in nature a spiritual experience. In 1990, I moved to Alaska, and I worked for the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. I got to spend a lot of time on the ocean and in the mountains. I chaired a committee for the homeless. My best friend was an Episcopal priest who was a member of the committee. He became seriously injured in a car accident. I helped him recover and also attended his church to protect his position. Some of the older members of the church wanted to get rid of him, and my presence averted that. He's the kind of guy you want on your side. Yeah. I worked with the Native American community, which was going through a cultural revival, and drumming was an integral part of the ceremonies. Before I left, I had a traditional drum made for me. And in 1998, I was living in Northeast Wyoming and working with Native American college students to help organize a series of powwows. Powwows, while dance competitions, have strong religious meaning as well as Native pride. 4 years later, I moved to Colorado and had the opportunity to make a couple of Native American drums. I located a drum group in Berthoud and started playing with them. Was that you guys? Or that was before, I think. Yeah, that was, okay. Yeah. I also drummed for a couple of Native American ceremonies, and the group also played West African drums. I was only in Colorado for a few years when I moved to Western Massachusetts. I joined a core group of drummers who drummed for most of the events in the area, including pagan festivals. The pagan festivals were sponsored by Earth Spirit. There, a lot of different schools of neo-paganism. I was lucky to find a program that was meaningful to me. In Your Mythic Journey by Keene and Valley Fox, one of the viewpoints suggested is, quote, that if the world is a mystery to be savored, then time is the filter through which the human animal perceives the mystery of being. Now is a strange gift that will never come again. I'll read that again. Once again, in case you're interested, the book is called In Your Mythic Journey by Keene and Valley Fox. The quote is that if the world is a mystery to be savored, then time is the filter through which the human animal perceives the mystery of being. Now is a strange gift that will never come again. While my spiritual direction is still open-ended, nature-centered spirituality has become the cornerstone of my belief. Carl Kronberg. Thank you for sharing this, Fran. Peg, would you like to come up? Thank you. And if you'll please introduce yourself to everybody. Thank you.
Hello. What a wonderful group here. People who are dear friends and people who I'm sure will become very dear friends of Fran. Now, I have called her Frances, but I'll try really hard to say Fran or Frances. I'm going to say both. I'm a neighbor. I live only 2 blocks away from the home where Carl and Fran lived, and we will see each other more often. They can walk to my house and I can walk to theirs. Carl was most recently at my house for a jazz show, and he left a little bit early, and he did walk home all by himself after a compliment. So that was really a special thing. Fran, Carl, and I shared something special with the Northern Colorado Traditional Jazz Society. And I see several members here, so if anyone wants to know more about that, just ask us, and you can join us. Fran is actually a fan of most any genre of music. And I'm going to keep learning a lot, trying to keep up with her. Recently, she asked if I'd go to this one and to that one, and I said, sure. Well, we went to a concert of War, a funk, hard rock, soul band from the 1970s. My adult boys said, Mom, you went to that? Well, now I'm going to learn what the boys listened to when they were teenagers. This is going to be fun. I'm really thoroughly enjoying it, and we have already 2 plans for this coming week and a couple more plans for the next week. So Frances and I have talked a little bit about grief after you lose a spouse, and I'm going to tell you something that is an absolute contradiction from what you heard from your minister, but it may be a time when it comes in handy. This came in really handy to me when I was at a basketball game one time, and someone wanted to talk to me and talk about my husband, and I just started to cry. Well, you don't do that at a basketball game with everybody around you. Oh, I had read in the New York Times, when you need to control your crying or your weeping, think of something else that is a diversion. It's an emotional diversion. Put your tongue up to the top of the roof of your mouth. Try that. You're thinking about where your tongue is going and you're almost smiling and you're listening. But if you're talking with somebody and you really want to chat back and forth with them, this article said just pinch the skin between your pointer finger and your thumb, and I'll help you get back on track to talk a little bit. I haven't tried that one. Well, I'm sure we have heartwarming stories to share about when we have become connected with Carl and also with Frances. So this is what she wrote just the other day because she wanted to share with you. And we are really honored that you share with us, and we look forward to becoming close friends. This is a backstory, if you will, of her journey from childhood and from Carl. And you know that's what good literature is made of, all of these good stories. So Frances wanted you to know, how did Carl and I meet, and what impact did he have on my life? We met in Buffalo, New York. Carl's parents were separated, and he was living with his mother in Chicago, where she was living with an alcoholic, which was a dangerous situation. So then his father invited him to come to Buffalo, and Carl accepted. Well, she went to Buffalo too because she found a new college job, and she had been living in Chicago as well. So there you go with some commonalities. She was newly divorced, and she asked around for someone that she could go hiking with, and she found Carl. So they began hiking together. Carl had been living with a woman who was a lawyer and who was known for her work supporting the anti-Vietnam leaders, but their relationship was dissolving. So she and Carl became partners. When she was looking for her next job, she found one in Alaska. Carl was working as an histology technician, which is an in-demand lab worker, but he didn't want to quit his job to move unless he felt and she felt that the relationship was worth that risk. They both agreed this one would be a good move. His willingness to move and find new work in places where she found worthwhile jobs enabled her to take risks that she would never have taken. She has advanced degrees in the liberal arts, and she was expecting to teach, but she found new opportunities that were in administration, a very different role. Carl's support and presence enabled her, and she's written this, so sometimes I'm in her personal voice. Carl's support and presence enabled me, an introvert and a loner, to manage in situations where I was expected to be outgoing and sociable. Carl became really connected with nature when his father was in the military, and when he was 2 years old, he lived with parents near the Gulf Coast where his father was away on duty, and that's where he really got connected with boats, fish, and horses. When his father got a job in Chicago, then he discovered the Chicago Zoo, and he discovered the forest near the various places where they lived in Chicago, where he could escape from endless trauma in his home life. So once he and Fran got the opportunities to live full-time in Alaska and then in Wyoming, his spiritual life and nature were inextricably one. He adopted what Frank Lloyd Wright said, "I believe in God, only I spell it Nature, nature." Carl's life was extremely challenging. Once his mother was ill and away for months, and another time his father was ill and away for months. And in each of these separate situations, it was certain neighbors who became supportive and family. In one case, it was a Black police officer. This is when they lived a Black neighborhood. And Carl was once attacked by the other boys in that neighborhood. As I'm thinking about that, that might have been South Chicago, an area that I'm familiar with as well. So then when his father moved to a less poor neighborhood, which happened to be the northern suburb of Chicago, there was a highly Christian one, and there he was also attacked for being a Jew. His only friend in that neighborhood was a Black male his own age. Then he finally moved away from either parent and into the homes of folks he was out protesting with. So there's always someone who's supportive of friendship that can help a person grow and learn and move into a different area. Carl's father earned a Purple Heart for his work in World War II, and he found meaningful work helping injured veterans, but his father still was a disaster. And the last straw for Carl was when father's job was in a federal building that was the site of the protests that Carl had led. You've heard the story about the FBI. You've heard that a couple times. A man came up to Carl and at a protest and attacked him, which led to Carl's arrest. And then years later, that man told Carl that he'd been in trouble with the law, and the police said they'd drop the charges against him if he attacked Carl so they could arrest Carl. The judge in this case was a Black man, and I think we heard that that trial went on for 2 months. This Black man, the judge, was a more understanding, good man who later ran for mayor in Buffalo. Well, Fran says if you saw the library in their house, you would be astonished at the hundreds of scholarly books, particularly on these topics: anthropology, geology, archaeology, and religion. Although he started community college and then he dropped and then he went to University of Buffalo, his activism took priority over anything else. He was alone then, except for his activist friends. Fran, she says, I convinced him, and I'm saying you need to know that Fran convinced him to resume college at one where you could design your own goals and get credit for what you already knew at the college level. So after that, he continued to study and learn in his own way. You can see why Fran has been very, very effective in community colleges wherever they lived. Carl is in a documentary we made, she says, after the work of a native elder in Alaska, whom he recognized and our anthropology teacher respected. There were individuals along the way who did recognize his potential. One was a science teacher in high school who pushed him to persist. Another was his father's second wife, Jackie, who introduced him to a world of literature and culture that he had not known existed. So Carl was a man who pulled himself up and out into a positive world when there were people around who really encouraged him. So Fran has some advice to give to you. Remember, we will all disappear, and we should take advantage of every moment we have with someone who matters to you. Listen, ask, pay attention, and support them. You don't want to regret what you could have or should have done to make their lives worthwhile. The importance, I have to say, of women in men's lives as well, right? Thank you for listening, and I think, Francis, you're going to have a lot of friends who just gather around you. They may not go to those concerts, though.
Now is the time when we're all going to be able to share our brief memories of Carl. So if there's anyone on Zoom who would like to share a brief memory, please use the reaction hand at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand, and we will call on you. Thank you.
Oh, that was so much fun. Thank you. So great. I can see why Carl joined you and was a part of it. Yeah. Seeing that picture of Carl, can't you just imagine him being a part of this? Yeah. So I'd like to invite people to come and share a few brief thoughts about Carl. And Tam, I'm wondering if it might work best if we start with the folks on Zoom and just go that way first.
Is there anyone who would like to start?
Cross your fingers that all the technology works. Tam is fabulous, so thank you, Tam.
Laura
Thank you, Alice, for
Feinerman
running
would like
sound.
to speak, so please unmute yourself and go right ahead.
Okay. I am Laura Feinerman. I am Fran's niece. And as you've learned from the autobiography and the different journeys that we've talked about Carl's life, I've not had many opportunities to get to know Carl. The one story that I would share is that a year ago, my first grandchild was born. And the child is in Colorado, and I was visiting. And Fran and Carl came to visit and share dinner with us and meet the grandchild as well. My daughter has, in addition to the newborn baby, a dog who she has treasured. And as you can imagine, the dog will always be the first dog, but now is second fiddle. When Fran and Carl came, they brought a huge box of huge biscuits, which gave the dog all the attention that he really needed. And I just see that as an act of kindness and generosity and understanding. And it was a simple act, and no one had to do it. But Carl and Fran made the effort to welcome the entire family and to visit with us. And it was really lovely. And I wish I'd gotten to know Carl better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else on Zoom that would like to contribute?
This is Rose, but I don't know how to make it work.
You're doing great.
I'm Carl's sister, and we were 10 years apart. So I only knew him till I was about maybe, I can't even remember, but I was very young. But he had a cat named Valentine, and we both loved Kitty. And she was beautiful in black and white. And he was very kind to her and to animals. And he was kind to me. And I do remember when he protested in front of my dad's building, and I remember his powerful strength to stand for people who were in need or needed protected and he stood against violence, and he always wanted to help people. And I wish I had gotten together with him more, but we were always very far apart. And so I called a few times a year, and we chatted maybe 3 or 4 times a year. And he and you and Fran and Carl always sent me beautiful cards during the holidays, which I've saved. And I loved my brother very much. And Fran, I really do hope we get to know each other more. And thank you for sharing all those beautiful things and that I didn't know about my brother. So I trust that you're going to have friends and stay connected, and that we stay connected. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rose. Would anyone else on Zoom like to contribute a brief memory? Please unmute yourself. I, Reverend, I think that's all for now. Thank you.
If anyone else chooses to, or lets you know that they would like to speak, just wave to us, Tam, and we'll include them too. So I would like to offer the opportunity for you to speak as well. We have this great microphone right here, and this cochlear implant. I'm thinking maybe I can attach this on here. No, that's not going to work. Put it on the chair. Oh, great. And that's going to work. Okay, great. Thank you. I'll leave it right there. That way you don't have to worry about stairs. So I just invite you to come forward and share a few words about Carl. Anything you would like to share with everyone? Thank you, Mickey. Probably should adjust this a little bit for you. Maybe. Or maybe not. It's a little bit better. Always have to have something. Yeah.
Thank you, Dana. My name is Mickey McGuire, and I knew Carl not real well, but he was a member of Trout Unlimited, and we have a local chapter of about 800 members now, 800 to 1,000, depends on the year. And Carl was fairly active in the chapter. A lot of the members don't show up to meetings, they don't volunteer, but Trout Unlimited is a cold water conservation organization, focused on preserving the rivers, especially in northern Colorado where our chapter operated. He did help out a lot with our youth camp, and if any of you have 14 to 17-year-old kids in your life, look for the announcements next spring. So, and Carl was a member of our church, as you know, and one day he came up to me and he said, "Oh, I have a couple of fly rods to donate. We're mostly fly fishermen and women." And I said, "Okay." And so I contacted our raffle people and that kind of stuff. And they said, "Yeah, we'll take them." Well, about a month goes by and Carl says, "Oh, I have those fly rods for you. 14 of them." He was a fly fisherman, I think, most of his life. And I talked to him a little bit about that. He shared his experiences about buffalo and that kind of stuff. But Alaska, he was pretty avid, I think. And I believe he joined, well, I know he was a lifetime member of Trout Unlimited, which is a big deal. And he fished a lot in Alaska. He fished in Powell, Wyoming. He fished here, of course. And so we got to know each other a little bit. Well, in addition to the fly rods, Fran brought like 32-gallon Tupperware things full of flies and all kinds of other equipment. So anyway, we donated all of that to the chapter. Because of his interest in fly fishing, I was sitting with Fran in the final days in hospice. And Fran told me that Carl had wished that his ashes be spread in Powell, Wyoming. And I didn't really know where Powell was, but I thought it was in the northern part of Wyoming, and that's true. It's just a few miles outside of Cody. And so Fran was going to drive up there. I said, "Fran, don't go alone." And my wife, Vaughn, and she are very active in League of Women Voters together. And so the three of us drove up to Powell, and we met Carl's fishing buddy, Denise. And they'd fished all over that area of the country. And so Denise took us on a wonderful little tour of their fishing spots. And I get it. I know why Carl wanted his ashes spread there. We just had a wonderful time together. So thank you, Fran, for sharing that with us.
so much, Mickey. I'm so glad you were able to do that with them together. Others.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Just one moment, Denise. We'll get to you in a second. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Denise.
Hi, my name's Denise, and I do live up here in Powell, Wyoming. Since Mickey invoked my name, I thought I'd jump in here with just a couple of memories of Carl. Carl and I met when he and Fran asked me if I would hang their collection of art in their home here that they had. I was the art and galleries director at the college, and I said, "You bet, I would love to do that." And so Fran told me that her husband Carl was there, so I go out there and here's this great guy. And so we talk about art, and then we find out that we have an interest in art and anthropology and archaeology, and then we get around to fishing. And I come from a long line of fishing people. And so Carl and I really hit it off. We were great buddies. And he really got me back into fly fishing, which I'd kind of gotten away from when I was younger. And so I credit Carl with getting me back into fly fishing. And we had a wonderful time here. And great times on the river and just sitting out and being in nature and watching wildlife. And then also the interactions that we would have with art and anthropology. We had a wonderful anthropology professor here, Doug Nelson, and Carl and I would attend a lot of Doug's activities, the powwows. I always sponsored the children's dance at the powwows, and Carl was always part of the powwows too. And he was just an all-around great guy. He was a great buddy, and I just really enjoyed his friendship. And I was touched that he had asked to have his ashes brought here and spread at the special places that we fished. And so I was glad that I could do that for Carl. He was a great guy.
Thank you, Denise.
Denise, I'm glad you're able to join us. In case you didn't catch that, Denise was the friend that they went up to see. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
My name is Beth Franklin, and I am friends with, or was friends with Carl and Fran. They were so nice to me, the two of them. That's what I want to say. And I love jazz, and I didn't have anybody to go to jazz clubs with, so they invited me. First when I lived in Loveland, and then when I moved to Boulder, they'd drive to Boulder, I'd meet them someplace. So that was one story. Carl knew everything about everything. And like I had taken a National Geographic tour to see the prehistoric caves in southwestern France. And I was getting all mixed up trying to tell both of them what I had seen. And of course, he had read 100 books on the topic, but so nice all the time. And so I wanted to say that. And then I just wanted to tell Fran, I may choke up on this, but he asked me to take you to Israel.
Wow. Thank you. I hope you get to go. Come on up. It's good to see you.
Well, I'm Barbara Case. I'm a friend of Namakwa Unitarian Universal Fellowship. I met Carl on a spiritual journey because we happen to have a gay son. And my son learned that I'm Jewish. And Carl and I were in a class together. Maybe you've heard of Osher through CSU. We had it with Rabbi Hillel Katzir. And He taught everything you want to know about Judaism, but were afraid to ask. So Carl and I, we sat together, and it was really beautiful friendship that we had. I'm a married woman. I have my husband, my family, but I don't really have too many male friends. And Carl was my friend, and he knew I lacked something. And he and Fran came to the house and brought me my first menorah for Hanukkah. I will never forget that. And I truly love both of you, but I don't know Fran as well. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you. Thank you.
My husband and I go to Fort Collins often at Avogadro's to hear a jazz band, the Poudre River Regulars. And Fran and Carl went often too. And this lovely lady, we met there. And we just shared lots of good times with great music. And we'll continue to do so. We'll still do it, Fran, for sure. Yep, see you Friday.
Peg, I think you're the events planner. Yeah, I love it. We could all use an events planner.
My name is Scott, and I know that a lot of you knew Carl a lot longer than me and a lot better than me. But what I'd like to share is that when I joined Djembe Jive, I virtually doubled the level of testosterone in the movement. Carl and I bonded over that. But it was much more than a superficial kind of thing. I always felt that Carl and I shared more in common. I never really got an opportunity to explore that, but I feel so blessed to be here with all of you because he and I do indeed share many, many commonalities. And I feel blessed to have known him as long as I did. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Come on up. Oh, and if anybody has any mobility issues or anything, I can bring the microphone to you if that's better for you. Just let me know.
My name is Emily Moore, and I met Carl back in Ketchikan, Alaska in the late 1990s when I worked for Fish and Game as a summer intern counting fish eggs. And I had to count all these fish eggs under a big hood because they were preserved in formaldehyde. I had to wear a gas mask. And I was back from college as a French minor, and so I made myself count on the clock at like hundreds of fish eggs. But what made that summer palatable was that Carl worked in the fish egg lab with me. And I really hadn't, growing up in Ketchikan, I really hadn't met many men like Carl. He talked so much about all of his work for social justice. We got shipped out to a remote trailer in Craig, Alaska, and my family kind of raised their eyebrows that Fish and Game was sending their 19-year-old daughter with an older man to live in a trailer out in remote Alaska. But Carl would just take, after we'd count our fish eggs, we'd go out, he'd fly fish in the Quogue River, I'd pick berries. It was a wonderful gift to meet a man like that when I was a young person. And it was so funny because 20 years later, I'm a professor at CSU, and I ran into Carl and Fran at the CSU powwow, and we were like, wait, don't we know each other from Ketchikan? So it was a real gift to see them again here. But thank you.
Wow, thank you. I'm so glad you were able to share that with us today. Anyone else? Come on
I had some words planned out. Hearing your stories has made me think of a different realm to go into, and I'll still share this with you. But one of the things that occurs to me is, in my own journey in life, music has been one of the few things that I've found where I can be myself, where I can affect change with other people, and it's affect change for better, for healing, for health, for peace in the entire planet. And that's one of the reasons that I have stuck with it for now, my whole life I've been in music, but drumming I've been in since 1988. I did a big transformation in about 2004 to West African drumming because of some friends in Fort Collins who invited me to some classes. I also happen to work full-time in a realm that is much more MAGA related than open-minded related. And so when I tell people that I have to miss a day of work because there's a seminar where I'm going to go to the seminar and be experiencing African music, they ask me, well, who are you teaching? And I say, I'm not teaching, I'm the student. I'm going to study with people who have been studying this genre since they were 5 years old. They speak 3 to 5 to 7 languages. I'm struggling with my second language. And I'm going with open ears to try and learn and be a better person from these people who, yes, they are African, from West Africa, but they are amazing. So I think the music venues that I've been going to have been helping to break this ice, this prejudice, this kind of hate that people try to perpetuate in certain realms. And to hear now, because I didn't get to read Carl's autobiography, I saw it for the first time just now. I had no idea he was so active in civil rights and in people's rights and helping to uplift those around him. I just knew from personal experience that's what he was doing for me. And I only met him maybe 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago through Nancy's group. I'd come down to the drum circles and she'd have all these people in the circle and they'd all be doing something. And Carl would always be clear off over in the back, over in the side, not in the front row, not being the most flamboyant, but he was back there. And it always amazed me. And then once I started to learn, it's like, you could be teaching, you could be, leading this stuff. And he was happy with just being supportive in the background. So that leads me up to where I think maybe I can read this. My grandma always told me that still waters run deep. And I think about that with Carl, because even now I'm finding out there were so many ripples of beauty coming from him, and I only knew a couple of them. I first met Carl at one of Nancy's drum circles. True to his demeanor, he would sit in the back and on the side, not seeking the fanfare, but always with a jovial spark in his eye. He was always aware. He was listening. He was seeing everything that was going on around him. He knew what was happening. One day, he let me play his djembe. It was sweet. Oh, I got to tell you. It was tuned properly, had great clarity for the bass, the tone, the slap. It all came out wonderfully. And although he would chuckle when I'd give him the compliment, he had excellent technique when he was playing. I would watch people's hands, and he knew exactly what he was doing. One of those ways that he could have shared that and taught the classes. And then he just mentioned, oh, I had played with a troupe in Boston one time. I had no idea it was this depth, and later on he happened to mention more details about how they would practice and they would do performances. He could have ripped it up at any time when he was playing with us, but he usually deferred to sit in the back and play a solid supporting role. And that's hard to do. He was a fascinating, gentle soul. In addition to curiously exploring the music of various cultures, he also had some interesting jobs. I had only known about him working with Native American tribes in Alaska on resource issues. He told me about one time that he had been an inspector on one of these Alaskan fishing ships, which is really hard because he's the guy who has to say whether all the work the guys have done during the whole day is proper or not, if they have to throw it back or if they have to keep it. And sometimes this was on pain of death because these guys are out there and he's the only voice amongst the whole crew that has to stand for reason and say, no, you can't do this. And he had that kind of integrity. I invited him more than once to come to Sunday Folly classes in Fort Collins, and he wanted to go and was really interested, came a few times, but he would usually decline because Sundays were often the day that he and Fran had dates. So he would tell me about going to a museum or go to listen to jazz or go out for a dinner. And while it was frustrating that he didn't get to come play with us, this was one of the ways that Carl had inspired me, because observing his model of conduct with Fran and keeping their marriage alive, keeping the dating alive, like as if they were still teenagers, I observed this, and so I've taken this home and I've incorporated it with my own life, and that has helped our lives to do a regular thing like that. So although I had little time with Carl, he's still one of those friendly humans who continues to inspire long after the physical body is gone. And the last thing I wanted to say, which just blows me away, I got a call one time about 2 years ago from Carl. He's like, I've got some drums, some musical instruments. I was wondering if you'd like to have them. And I said, well, sure, Carl. I'm always interested in gathering something. How much do you want for them? No, you don't understand. I don't want you to buy these. I want to give them to you. The only thing you have to promise me is that you will make sure that they don't just stay there and don't get played, but that they get out to people and get to be playing. So thanks to Nancy, who's inspired me to step in and try to become a drum facilitator. I've gone to a few classes and have some introductory level certification for that. I've been using these tools judiciously, tools and toys. I have 2 of the djembes who are out to people right now who are newbies up in Fort Collins with that group, who couldn't afford and didn't have their own djembe. And to come to class once a week and to play is nice, but you've got to have your own instrument at home to practice when you're ready to play, right? And so I said, okay, just give these, I'll let you have these djembes, play them until you get to the place where you either want this djembe or you want another djembe. If you decide to get rid of it, give it back to me, I'll give it to someone else. I've done that with some of the clothes. This is one of Carl's shirts. I wore that in honor for today. Wonderful wardrobe. Hand percussion, bells, little cabasas, little guiros, all manner of shakers made out of all kinds of materials. And so now I was never at the point where, like, Nancy has really invested a lot of time and effort in getting a nice toolbox of toys so that when she comes to a drum circle, everybody has something to play. I didn't really have that before. Now, thanks to Carl, I do. So bless you, Carl. Thank you. And thank you for continuing to inspire me and everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing all of that. Thank you so much. Tell me your name again. I'm not sure. Tony, great. Thank you, Tony. That's wonderful. Anyone else? Okay. We have a special song that we love to sing in the Unitarian Universalist tradition. It's called Blue Boat Home. And the blue boat is the earth. So as you can see from all you have heard today, it's a particular song that honors the earth and honors this blue boat that we are all swimming on and floating on together and living together. So I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join with me in singing Blue Boat Home. Many thanks to Ryan Marvel. Thank you. I share with you these closing words by Mary Oliver. Everybody okay? Yeah, these pews are movable. Isn't that cool? I love that. So as we think of Carl and his love for nature, I share these words by Mary Oliver, who was a Unitarian Universalist, I must say. Look, the trees are turning their own bodies into pillars of light, are giving off the rich fragrance of cinnamon and fulfillment. The long tapers of cattails are bursting and floating away over the blue shoulders of the ponds, and every pond, no matter what it is, what its name is. Its name is nameless now. Every year, everything I have ever learned in my lifetime leads back to this: the fires and the black river of loss, whose other side is salvation, whose meaning none of us will ever know. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes, to let it go. To let it go. May the road rise with you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rain fall softly on your fields. And until we meet again, may love hold you in the hollow of love's hands. May it be so, my friends. May we remember Carl well, and may we hold each other in love. Thank you. I believe that Djembe Jive has another piece for us. And we have a reception after, and Ryan is also going to do a little more playing. So. you for being with us. Ryan's going to play some postlude music, and we can wander our way over to the fellowship hall for our reception. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the memorial service for Karl Kronberg. May you all go in peace.